Human baby brought an injured bear cub to the hospital. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning mist hung low over Willowbrook Valley, wrapping around the small community hospital like a gentle blanket. Dr. Sarah Chen had just finished her night shift in the emergency room when she heard something that made her pause at the sliding glass doors. It wasn't the usual sounds of early morning traffic or birds chirping in the nearby oak trees. This was different. This was the sound of tiny footsteps shuffling across gravel, accompanied by soft whimpering that seemed almost wild. She turned around slowly, her coffee cup still warm in her hands, and what she saw made her drop it entirely. The ceramic shattered against the concrete, sending brown liquid splashing across her white sneakers, but Sarah barely noticed. Walking toward the hospital entrance was the most unusual sight she had ever witnessed in her 15 years of medical practice. A small child, no more than 18 months old, was carefully guiding an injured bear cub toward the emergency room doors. The toddler's chubby hands were gently placed on the cub's fur, and she was making soft cooing sounds, as if trying to comfort the frightened animal. The cub, roughly the same size as the child, was limping badly on its front left paw, leaving small drops of blood on the pavement behind them. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her heart racing as she watched this impossible scene unfold before her eyes. The child looked up at her with the brightest blue eyes Sarah had ever seen. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, but there was something in her expression that spoke of pure determination. The little girl pointed at the cub and then at the hospital doors, as if she understood exactly where she needed to be. "Help," the child said in a tiny voice that barely carried across the morning air. "Help Bear." Sarah's medical training kicked in, but her mind was struggling to process what was happening. How had a toddler managed to bring a wild bear cub to the hospital? Where were the child's parents? And more importantly, where was the mother bear? As if reading her thoughts, a low growl echoed from the tree line about 50 yards away. Sarah's blood ran cold as she spotted a massive brown bear emerging from the shadows, its eyes fixed on the unusual pair at the hospital entrance. The mother bear took a few cautious steps forward, then stopped, seeming to assess the situation. The toddler heard the growl too and turned toward the forest. Instead of showing fear, she waved her tiny hand at the mother bear and called out, "Mama bear, baby hurt, fix baby." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. This child was actually communicating with wild bears as if it was the most natural thing in the world. The mother bear tilted her head, and for a moment that seemed to stretch forever, the three species stood frozen in this surreal tableau. Then the automatic doors of the hospital whooshed open, triggered by the toddler's movement, and she gently coaxed the injured cub inside. The little bear hesitated for just a second, looking back at its mother, before following the child into the bright fluorescent lighting of the emergency room. Sarah found herself following them inside, her mind racing with questions and her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and wonder. The scene that greeted her in the waiting area was one she would never forget as long as she lived. The night security guard, Marcus, was sitting behind his desk with his mouth hanging open. 3 people in the waiting room had jumped onto their chairs, and one elderly woman was clutching her chest, looking like she might faint. But the toddler seemed completely oblivious to the chaos she had caused. She had somehow managed to help the bear cub onto one of the waiting room chairs, and she was now standing beside it, gently stroking its fur while making soft shushing sounds. The cub, despite its obvious pain, was not showing any signs of aggression. Instead, it seemed to be drawing comfort from the child's presence. "Sweet Jesus," Marcus muttered, slowly reaching for his radio. "Dr. Chen, what in the world is going on here?" Sarah approached the unlikely pair cautiously, her medical instincts warring with her common sense. The rational part of her mind was screaming that this was dangerous, that wild animals were unpredictable, that they needed to call animal control immediately. But the part of her that had dedicated her life to healing was focused on the obvious pain the small cub was experiencing. "Hey there, sweetie," Sarah said softly, kneeling down to the child's level. "What's your name?" The toddler looked at her with those impossibly blue eyes and said, "Luna." Then she pointed at the cub. "Bear, baby hurt, fix please." Luna. The name seemed perfect for this mysterious child who had somehow formed a connection with wild animals. Sarah examined the cub from a safe distance and could see that its front paw was badly injured, possibly caught in a trap or snare. The wound was fresh but deep, and without proper treatment, infection would likely set in. "Luna, where are your mommy and daddy?" Sarah asked gently. The child's expression grew sad, and she shook her head. "No mommy, no daddy, just Luna and Bear family." Sarah's heart clenched at the words. Just Luna and Bear family. What did that mean? Had this child been living in the wild? Was that even possible? Before she could ask more questions, the automatic doors opened again, and Sarah's worst fears seemed to be realized. The mother bear had decided to come inside. The massive animal filled the doorway, her brown fur glistening in the artificial light. She was easily 7 feet tall when she reared up on her hind legs, and Sarah could see the powerful muscles rippling beneath her coat. The few remaining people in the waiting room scrambled for the exits, but Marcus, bless his heart, stayed at his post, though his hand was hovering over the emergency alarm. But instead of charging or showing aggression, the mother bear simply walked calmly into the waiting room and sat down next to the chair where her cub was resting. She looked at Luna, then at Sarah, and made a soft huffing sound that almost seemed like communication. Luna patted the mother bear's massive head and said, "Good mama." "Luna, help baby." Sarah realized she was witnessing something that defied all logic and everything she thought she knew about wildlife behavior. This child had somehow formed a bond with a family of wild bears, and they trusted her completely. But how? And why? The mystery deepened when Luna reached into a small pouch that Sarah now noticed was tied around the child's waist. From it, she pulled out what looked like herbs and berries, offering them first to the injured cub, then to its mother. Both bears accepted the offerings gratefully, and Sarah watched in amazement as the cub's breathing seemed to steady and its whimpering subsided slightly. "Dr. Chen," Marcus said quietly into his radio, "I think you need to see this. And maybe we should call someone who knows about wild animals. This is way beyond anything in our emergency procedures manual." Sarah nodded, but she couldn't take her eyes off the scene before her. Luna was now sitting cross-legged next to the chair, one small hand resting on the cub's uninjured paw, the other reaching up to touch the mother bear's nose. The three of them seemed to be communicating in a way that transcended species barriers. "Luna," Sarah said softly, "how long have you known these bears?" The child looked up at her with those haunting blue eyes and said something that sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Always. Luna, born with bear family. Mama bear find Luna when tiny baby. Take care of Luna. Teach Luna forest ways." Sarah felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. If what this child was saying was true, then she had been raised by wild bears. It sounded impossible, like something out of a fairy tale, but the evidence was sitting right in front of her. The injured cub whimpered softly, and Luna immediately turned her attention back to it. She began humming a melody that seemed to have a calming effect on both bears. It was a haunting tune that sounded almost wild itself, like wind through pine trees or water running over stones. "We need to help the baby bear," Luna said, looking directly at Sarah. "Luna, bring here because no, people can fix, but no hurt bear family. Please." The trust in the child's voice was heartbreaking. Somehow, this tiny human who had been raised by wild animals had faith that other humans would help, despite having no real experience with civilization. Sarah made a decision that would change all their lives forever. She knelt down beside Luna and said, "We're going to help your bear baby, Luna. I promise, but I need you to help me understand how to do it without scaring them, okay?" Luna's face lit up with the most beautiful smile Sarah had ever seen. "Luna, help. Luna, no bear talk." As Sarah began to formulate a plan for treating a wild bear cub in a human hospital, with its protective mother standing guard and a mysterious wild child serving as translator, she realized that this was going to be the most unusual case of her career. But what she didn't know yet was that Luna's arrival at the hospital was about to uncover secrets that would shake the small community of Willowbrook Valley to its core and reveal a connection between the child and the town that went back much further than anyone could have imagined. The first sign that something was deeply wrong came when Sarah tried to contact animal control. She picked up the phone behind the reception desk, keeping one eye on Luna and the bears, and dialed the emergency number she had memorized years ago. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, before a gruff voice answered. "Animal Control, this is Officer Rodriguez. This is Dr. Sarah Chen at Willowbrook Community Hospital. We have an emergency situation here. A child has brought an injured bear cub into our emergency room, and the mother bear is also present. We need immediate assistance." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. So long that Sarah wondered if the call had been dropped. "Officer Rodriguez? Are you there?" "Dr. Chen." The voice came back, but it sounded different now, strained, almost fearful. "Did you say a child brought the bear cub? What does this child look like?" Sarah found the question odd. "She's very young, maybe 18 months old, blonde hair, blue eyes. She says her name is Luna. Why do you ask?" Another pause, this one even longer than the first. Sarah could hear muffled voices in the background, as if Officer Rodriguez was talking to someone else with his hand over the phone. "Dr. Chen, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not let that child leave the hospital. Do not let anyone take her. We'll be there in 10 minutes with a full team. And whatever you do, do not call the state wildlife department. Do you understand me?" The line went dead, leaving Sarah staring at the phone in confusion. The urgency in Officer Rodriguez's voice had sent a chill down her spine. How did he know about Luna? And why was he so insistent that she not contact the state wildlife department? She turned back to the waiting area, where Luna was still sitting peacefully with the 2 bears. The mother bear had moved closer to her injured cub and was now gently licking its wounded paw. Luna was stroking both animals, continuing to hum that strange, haunting melody. "Luna," Sarah said softly, approaching the group. "How long have you been in the forest with the bears?" The child looked up at her with those piercing, blue eyes. "Always," she said simply. "Luna, born in forest. Mama bear find Luna when tiny baby, crying in box by big trees. A box by big trees." Sarah's mind raced. That sounded like someone had abandoned Luna in the forest as an infant. But who would do such a thing? And how had she survived? "Luna, do you remember anything about before the bears found you? Any people who might have taken care of you?" Luna shook her head, but then her expression grew thoughtful. Sometimes Luna have dreams. Dreams about lady with yellow hair like Luna, lady crying, lady say sorry over and over, but maybe just dreams. Sarah's heart ached for this child. Whether those were dreams or memories, they painted a picture of abandonment that no child should have to experience. But they also raised more questions. If Luna had been abandoned as an infant, how had she learned to speak? Bears couldn't teach language. As if reading her thoughts, Luna pointed to the forest beyond the hospital windows. Other people live in forests too. Old man teach Luna words. Teach Luna about plants that help sick animals. Old man say Luna special. Say Luna bridge between bear world and people world. An old man in the forest. Someone else who might have answers. Sarah was about to ask more questions when she heard the sound of multiple vehicles pulling into the hospital parking lot. Through the windows, she could see 3 official-looking SUVs with tinted windows, along with the familiar animal control van. "Luna," Sarah said urgently, "I need you to stay very close to me, okay? Some people are coming, and I want to make sure you're safe." The child nodded, but she also moved protectively closer to the injured cub. The mother bear sensed the change in atmosphere and rose to her full height, her ears alert and her muscles tensed. The automatic doors burst open, and Officer Rodriguez entered, followed by 4 other people in dark suits. Sarah had expected animal control officers, but these people looked more like federal agents. They moved with military precision, and their eyes immediately locked onto Luna and the bears. "Dr. Chen," Officer Rodriguez said, his voice tight with tension, "I need you to step away from the child." "I'm not going anywhere," Sarah replied firmly. "This child needs medical attention, and so does the bear cub. That's my priority." One of the suited figures stepped forward. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and cold eyes. "Dr. Chen, I'm Agent Patricia Vance with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. This situation is now under federal jurisdiction. We need to take custody of the child immediately." "On what grounds?" Sarah demanded. "This child hasn't committed any crime. She brought an injured animal for help." Agent Vance's expression hardened. "This child is a security risk. She has been living illegally in a protected wildlife preserve. Her presence has disrupted the natural ecosystem and endangered both human and animal populations." Luna seemed to sense the hostility in the room. She wrapped her small arms around the bear cub's neck and looked up at the agents with wide, frightened eyes. "No, take Luna away from Bear Family, please. Luna, no hurt anyone." The mother bear let out a low growl, positioning herself between Luna and the agents. Her message was clear. She would protect this child with her life. Agent Vance reached into her jacket, and Sarah's blood ran cold when she saw the tranquilizer gun. "We're authorized to use whatever force is necessary to secure the subject." "The subject?" Sarah stepped between Agent Vance and Luna. "She's a child. You can't just tranquilize her." "Dr. Chen, you don't understand the full situation here," Agent Vance said, her voice taking on a tone that suggested she was trying to be reasonable. "This child has been the subject of a federal investigation for over a year. She's been spotted multiple times in the Willowbrook National Forest, living with wild animals in a way that violates numerous federal laws." Sarah felt like she was missing something crucial. "A year? But how did you know to look for her? Someone would have had to report her missing." Agent Vance exchanged glances with her colleagues, and Sarah caught something in their expressions that made her stomach turn. They knew more than they were saying. Much more. "Dr. Chen," Officer Rodriguez said quietly, "there are things about this case that are classified, but I can tell you that Luna's presence here today is not a coincidence. Someone wanted her to be found. The implications of his words hit Sarah like a physical blow. You're saying someone orchestrated this? Someone wanted Luna to bring the bear cub here? Before anyone could answer, Luna stood up from her position next to the injured cub. Her small face was set with a determination that seemed far beyond her years. Luna know why people scared, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. Luna know what Luna can do. Old Man in Forest tell Luna. Luna can talk to animals, can heal animals, can make animals trust people. Old Man say Luna born special for reason. Agent Vance's face went pale. What old man? What did he tell you? Luna tilted her head, studying the agent with those unsettling blue eyes. Old Man say Luna have gift from Great Spirit. Say Luna parents give Luna to Forest because they know Luna need to learn Forest ways. Say one day Luna would have to choose between Forest World and People World. The room fell silent, except for the injured cub's labored breathing. Sarah could see the wheels turning in Agent Vance's mind, and she didn't like the direction they seemed to be heading. Luna, Sarah said gently, what else did the old man tell you? The child's expression grew sad. Old Man say Luna's real parents still alive. Say they live in town near Forest. Say they watch Luna from far away, but never come close because they think Luna better with Bear family. Old Man say Luna's mama cry every night, thinking about baby she give away. Sarah felt tears stinging her eyes. The tragedy of this situation was becoming clearer. Parents who had given up their child, thinking it was for the best. A child raised by wild animals, developing abilities that defied explanation. And now, federal agents who seemed to have their own agenda. Where is this old man now? Agent Vance demanded. Luna looked toward the forest beyond the windows. Old Man very sick. Luna try to help with forest medicine, but Old Man say his time ending, that why Luna must come to People Place now. Old Man say Luna ready to learn people ways too. Marcus, who had been quietly watching the entire exchange, suddenly spoke up. Agent Vance, if I may ask, how exactly did you know to respond to this situation so quickly? Dr. Chen only called Animal Control 15 minutes ago. Agent Vance's jaw tightened. That's classified information. No, Marcus said firmly. I don't think it is. I've worked as security at this hospital for 12 years. I know every protocol, every procedure, and I know that federal agents don't show up in 15 minutes unless they were already in the area, unless they were already watching. Sarah looked at Marcus with new respect. He was right. The response time was impossible unless these people had already been positioned nearby. How long have you been watching Luna? Sarah asked. How long have you known about her? Agent Vance remained silent, but one of the other agents shifted uncomfortably. Sarah caught the movement and focused on him. You, she said, pointing at the younger agent. How long? The young man glanced at Agent Vance, then back at Sarah. We've been monitoring the situation for 14 months, he said quietly, ever since the first confirmed sighting. Agent Morrison, Agent Vance snapped, but it was too late. 14 months, Sarah repeated. So you've known about a child living in the wild for over a year, and you did nothing to help her? We were gathering intelligence, Agent Vance said defensively. We needed to understand the full scope of the situation before taking action. Luna had been listening to this exchange with growing distress. The injured cub in her arms was breathing more heavily, and the mother bear was becoming increasingly agitated. The stress of the situation was affecting all of them. Please, Luna said, her voice breaking. Bear baby getting sicker. Can people help Bear baby first? Then Luna talk more? Sarah looked at the injured cub and realized that Luna was right. While they had been arguing, the animal's condition had worsened. The wound was bleeding more heavily, and its breathing was becoming labored. "She's right," Sarah said firmly. "I don't care what federal jurisdiction this falls under. I'm a doctor, and there's an injured animal here that needs help. Everything else can wait." Agent Vance started to protest, but Officer Rodriguez held up his hand. "Let the doc work," he said. "The cub's not going anywhere, and neither is Luna. But if that animal dies while we're standing here arguing, there's going to be hell to pay." Sarah nodded gratefully and turned to Luna. "Okay, sweetheart. I need you to help me understand how to treat your bear baby without scaring it or its mama. Can you do that?" Luna wiped her eyes and nodded bravely. "Luna, help. Luna, tell bears that people want to help, not hurt." What happened next was something Sarah would never forget as long as she lived. Luna placed her small hands on the injured cub and began to make soft sounds that were unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. They weren't quite words, but they weren't quite animal sounds either. They were something in between, something that seemed to bridge the gap between human and animal communication. The cub's breathing began to steady, and it looked up at Luna with complete trust. The mother bear, responding to some signal from Luna, lay down on the floor and watched calmly as Sarah approached with her medical bag. "Incredible," Agent Morrison whispered. "She really can communicate with them." Sarah knelt beside the cub and began to examine its injured paw. The wound was deep, likely from a steel trap, and would require stitches. But what amazed her was that the cub remained completely still, as if it understood that she was trying to help. Luna continued her strange communication with both bears, her small voice rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. And as Sarah worked to clean and treat the wound, she began to understand that she was witnessing something truly extraordinary. This child had abilities that couldn't be explained by conventional understanding. She could communicate with wild animals in a way that went beyond anything science had documented. And if Agent Vance's behavior was any indication, there were people in positions of power who wanted to exploit those abilities. As Sarah sutured the cub's wound, her mind was already racing ahead to the challenges they would face. Luna needed protection, not just from the federal agents, but from anyone who might want to use her gifts for their own purposes. The question was, how could one small-town doctor protect a child with abilities that could change the world? The answer would come from a source none of them expected, and it would reveal secrets about Willowbrook Valley that had been buried for over 20 years. But first, they had to get through this day, and the challenges that lay ahead were far greater than any of them could have imagined. As Sarah finished stitching the bear cub's wound, wrapping it carefully in sterile bandages, the hospital's main entrance doors slid open once again. This time, however, the person who entered was not another federal agent or official. It was an elderly man leaning heavily on a walking stick, his weathered face etched with lines of pain and exhaustion. His clothes were rough and dirt-stained, suggesting he had traveled far through the forest to get here. Luna's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She looked up from comforting the injured cub and let out a cry of pure joy. "Grandfather Oak, you came!" The old man's eyes, surprisingly bright despite his obvious illness, found Luna across the room. A smile spread across his weathered features, transforming his entire appearance. "Little moon child," he said in a voice that carried the weight of years and wisdom. "I told you this day would come." Agent Vance immediately stepped forward, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. "Sir, you need to leave immediately. This is a restricted area under federal jurisdiction." The old man, whom Luna had called Grandfather Oak, barely glanced at the agent. Instead, he continued walking slowly toward Luna and the bears, his walking stick tapping rhythmically against the hospital floor. The mother bear, instead of showing any aggression toward this newcomer, actually moved aside to make room for him, as if she recognized and respected his presence. "Federal jurisdiction," Grandfather Oak repeated, his voice carrying a note of dry amusement. "Agent Vance, isn't it?" "Patricia Vance, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Special Operations Division." Agent Vance's face went pale. "How do you know my name?" The old man lowered himself carefully onto one of the waiting room chairs, positioning himself between Luna and the federal agents. "I know many things, Agent Vance. I know, for instance, that your department has been conducting illegal surveillance on protected lands for the past 2 years. I know that you've been tracking Luna not because she's a security risk, but because certain parties in your government want to study her abilities for military applications." The room fell silent, except for the gentle sounds of Luna comforting the injured cub. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as the implications of the old man's words sank in. Military applications. They wanted to weaponize Luna's connection with animals. "That's preposterous," Agent Vance said, but her voice lacked conviction. "We're here to protect both the child and the public from dangerous wildlife interactions." Grandfather Oak laughed, a sound that held no humor. "Dangerous wildlife interactions? Agent Vance, in the 14 months you've been watching Luna, how many incidents of animal aggression have you documented? How many attacks on humans? How many disruptions to the ecosystem?" Agent Vance remained silent, which was answer enough. "None," Grandfather Oak continued, "because Luna doesn't disrupt the natural order. She enhances it. She brings harmony where there was conflict, healing where there was suffering. And that terrifies certain people in positions of power, because it represents something they can't control or understand." Luna moved closer to the old man, reaching out to touch his weathered hand. "Grandfather Oak sick," she said softly, her voice filled with concern. "Luna tried to help with forest medicine, but sickness too strong." The old man squeezed her tiny hand gently. "My time in this world is ending, little moon child. But before I go, there are truths that must be spoken. Truths that have been hidden for too long." He turned his attention to Sarah, his bright eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel like he was looking directly into her soul. "Dr. Sarah Chen, you were born in this valley, weren't you? 28 years ago, at this very hospital." Sarah nodded, confused by the sudden shift in conversation. "Yes, but I don't understand what that has to do with anything. Your parents were Dr. Michael Chen and Nurse Rebecca Chen. Your father was the chief of staff here. Your mother worked in pediatrics. Both dedicated their lives to healing others." "How could you possibly know that?" Sarah whispered. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 12, and she had been raised by her grandmother in the city before returning to Willowbrook to practice medicine. Grandfather Oak's expression grew sad. "Because I was there the night Luna was born. I was there when her parents made the most difficult decision any parent could make. And I was there when your parents tried to save her mother's life." The world seemed to tilt around Sarah. "What are you saying?" "Luna's mother was brought to this hospital 21 years ago, in the middle of a terrible snowstorm. She was barely conscious, bleeding heavily, and in the final stages of labor. Your father and mother worked through the night to save both mother and child." Luna looked up at Grandfather Oak with wide eyes. "Luna's mama was here, in this place?" "Yes, little moon child. You were born in room 237, on the second floor of this hospital. Your first breath was taken in this building, under the care of the same people who trained Dr. Chen." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. The connection she had felt to Luna from the moment she saw her was suddenly making sense. What happened to her mother? Grandfather Oak's voice grew heavy with sorrow. She survived the birth, but barely. The complications were severe, and she knew she might not live to raise her child. But more than that, she knew something else. She knew that Luna was different, special. Even as a newborn, Luna displayed abilities that couldn't be explained. What kind of abilities? Agent Morrison asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Animals were drawn to her, Grandfather Oak explained. Even in the hospital nursery, birds would gather at the windows. The hospital's therapy dog refused to leave the maternity ward, and Luna herself seemed to respond to their presence in ways that defied medical explanation. Agent Vance was listening intently now, her earlier hostility replaced by something that looked almost like hunger. "Continue," she ordered. Grandfather Oak turned to face her directly. Luna's mother knew that if word got out about her daughter's abilities, the child would never have a normal life. She would become a subject of study, experimentation, exploitation. So she made a choice that broke her heart but saved her daughter's soul. "She gave Luna away," Sarah whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. "She asked me to take Luna to the forest, to raise her among the animals that were already drawn to her. She believed that Luna needed to grow up understanding her gift, learning to use it properly before she could safely return to the human world." Luna was crying now, soft tears rolling down her small cheeks. "Mama loved Luna? Mama no throw Luna away?" Grandfather Oak lifted her onto his lap, holding her gently. "Your mama loved you more than life itself, little moonchild. Giving you to me was the hardest thing she ever did, but she knew it was the only way to keep you safe." "Where is she now?" Sarah asked. "Luna's mother. Is she still alive?" The old man nodded slowly. "She is. She has watched from a distance all these years, waiting for the day when Luna would be ready to know the truth. She lives here in Willowbrook Valley, and she has grieved for her lost daughter every single day for 21 years. Agent Vance stepped forward aggressively. "I need the mother's name and location immediately. She has information that could be vital to our investigation." "Your investigation," Grandfather Oak said, his voice turning cold, "is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what Luna represents. You see her as a tool to be used, a weapon to be controlled. But Luna is something far more precious than that. She is a bridge between worlds, a healer of the ancient wounds between humans and nature." "That's all very poetic," Agent Vance replied. "But the reality is that this child possesses abilities that could have significant strategic value. The Department of Defense has authorized us to take her into protective custody for further study." The mother bear, who had been lying quietly during this conversation, suddenly rose to her feet and let out a low, threatening growl. She had understood enough of the exchange to recognize a threat to Luna, and her protective instincts were fully activated. Luna immediately moved to calm the bear, placing her small hands on the animal's massive head and making those strange, musical sounds that seemed to bridge human and animal communication. But Sarah could see the fear in the child's eyes. She was beginning to understand that these people wanted to take her away from everything she had ever known. "Luna stays with Bear family," the child said firmly, her voice carrying a strength that belied her tiny size. "Luna no go with mean people who want to hurt Luna." "We don't want to hurt you," Agent Morrison said gently, earning a sharp look from his superior. "We just want to understand your abilities. Think of all the good you could do if we could learn how to replicate what you can do." Grandfather Oak laughed bitterly. "Replicate? Young man, you don't understand what you're talking about." Luna's connection to the animal world isn't a skill that can be taught or copied. It's a gift that comes from something much deeper than science can measure. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. She was genuinely curious now, trying to understand the full scope of what made Luna so special. Luna's abilities come from her lineage, Grandfather Oak explained. Her mother's family has a connection to the natural world that goes back generations. Some would call it magic, others would call it a genetic anomaly. But whatever you call it, it's not something that can be replicated in a laboratory. Agent Vance's eyes gleamed with interest. Her mother's family. You're talking about the Willow family, aren't you? The indigenous people who originally inhabited this valley. Sarah gasped. The Willow family was legendary in Willowbrook Valley. According to local stories, they had been the original inhabitants of the area, living in harmony with the forest and its creatures for centuries before European settlers arrived. But most people assumed they were just legends, stories passed down to give the valley a sense of mystique and history. "They're real," Sarah whispered. Grandfather Oak nodded solemnly. "Very real. And Luna's mother, Elena Willow, is the last of her line. She carries the ancient knowledge, the old ways of communicating with the forest spirits and the animal kingdom. When she gave birth to Luna, she passed that gift on to her daughter." "Elena Willow," Agent Vance repeated, making notes on a device she had pulled from her pocket. "Where can we find her?" "You can't," a new voice said from the hospital entrance. Everyone turned to see a woman in her early 40s standing in the doorway. She was tall and graceful, with long dark hair streaked with premature silver and the same piercing blue eyes as Luna. But it was the expression on her face that caught everyone's attention. It was a mixture of fierce protectiveness and heartbreaking love. Luna stared at the woman for a long moment, then whispered, "Mama?" Elena Willow stepped into the room, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face. "Hello, my little moon child," she said softly. "I've been waiting so long to see you again." The reunion that followed was one of the most emotionally charged moments Sarah had ever witnessed. Luna practically flew from Grandfather Oak's lap into her mother's arms, and Elena held her daughter as if she would never let her go again. Both were crying, but they were tears of joy and relief rather than sorrow. Agent Vance, however, was focused on other matters. "Elena Willow, you are under arrest for child abandonment and endangerment. You have the right to remain silent." "Agent Vance," Grandfather Oak interrupted, his voice carrying a power that hadn't been there before. "I would think very carefully before taking any action against Elena Willow." "And why is that?" the agent demanded. The old man smiled, but there was something in his expression that made Sarah's skin crawl with unease. "Because Elena Willow isn't just Luna's mother. She's also the legal owner of the entire Willowbrook National Forest, and you've been conducting illegal surveillance on her private property for over a year." The bombshell hit the room like a physical force. Agent Vance's confident demeanor crumbled, and even Officer Rodriguez looked stunned. Sarah's mind reeled as she tried to process this new information. "That's impossible," Agent Vance stammered. "The Willowbrook National Forest is federal land. It has been for over 50 years. Elena Willow, still holding Luna tightly, looked at the agent with cold amusement. "Actually, it hasn't. The transfer of land ownership from the Willow family to the federal government was never legally completed. My grandfather signed preliminary papers in 1970, but he died before the final transfer could be executed. The land has remained in our family's possession ever since. But the federal government has been managing it as a national forest," Agent Morrison protested. "Without proper legal authority," Elena replied calmly. My family allowed it because we believed the land would be better protected under federal oversight. But that arrangement can be terminated at any time by the legal landowner, which is me. Sarah watched as Agent Vance's entire operation began to fall apart around her. If Elena Willow truly owned the forest, then all of their surveillance activities had been conducted illegally on private property. Any evidence they had gathered would be inadmissible, and they could face serious criminal charges for trespassing and harassment. But Elena wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, as the legal guardian of Luna Willow, I am exercising my parental rights to refuse any contact between my daughter and federal agents. If you have concerns about her welfare, you can address them through the proper family court channels. Luna looked up at her mother with admiration. "Mama's strong," she said proudly. Elena smiled down at her daughter. "Mama has been preparing for this day for a long time, little moonchild. I knew that eventually people would try to take advantage of your gifts, but I also knew that when the time came, we would be ready to protect ourselves." Grandfather Oak struggled to his feet, his illness clearly taking a toll on his strength. "Elena, there's something else you need to know. The reason Luna brought the injured cub here today wasn't random. Someone has been setting traps throughout the forest, specifically targeting the bear family that raised Luna." Elena's expression darkened. "What kind of traps?" "Steel snares, hidden in areas where the bears commonly travel. This cub's injury is the third one we've seen in the past month. Someone is deliberately trying to hurt Luna's adopted family." Agent Vance and her team exchanged glances, and Sarah caught something in their expressions that made her blood run cold. They knew about the traps. They might even have been involved in setting them. "Agent Vance," Sarah said slowly, "did your department have anything to do with those traps?" The agent's silence was answer enough. Elena Willow's eyes blazed with fury. "You used injured animals as bait to force Luna out of the forest. You deliberately hurt innocent creatures to manipulate my daughter into revealing herself." "We needed to understand the full extent of her abilities," Agent Vance said defensively. "The traps were a necessary tool for our investigation." The mother bear, who had been surprisingly calm during most of this confrontation, suddenly let out a roar that shook the windows of the hospital. She had understood enough to realize that these humans had been responsible for hurting her cub, and her protective rage was overwhelming. Luna immediately moved to calm the bear, but her own emotions were running high. "Bad people hurt Bear Baby on purpose?" she asked, her voice breaking with anguish. "Luna's friends hurt because of Luna." The guilt and pain in the child's voice was heartbreaking. Sarah realized that Luna was blaming herself for the injuries to the animals she loved, simply because the traps had been set to capture her. "No, sweetheart," Elena said firmly, kneeling down to Luna's level. "This is not your fault. These people made a choice to hurt innocent animals, and that choice was wrong. You did nothing but try to help. But the damage was done." Luna's trust in the human world, which had been tentatively building during her interactions with Sarah and Marcus, was shattered. She buried her face against her mother's shoulder and sobbed with the kind of raw emotion that only a child could feel. Grandfather Oak's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Agent Vance, you and your team have 30 seconds to leave this hospital before I make a phone call that will end your careers permanently." "You can't threaten federal agents," Agent Vance replied, but her voice lacked conviction. The old man pulled out an ancient-looking cell phone and began dialing. Senator Patricia Willow, Elena's cousin, serves on the Senate Intelligence Committee. She's been waiting for someone to give her an excuse to investigate illegal surveillance operations on indigenous lands. I think she'll be very interested to hear about your activities here today." Sarah watched as Agent Vance's face went from pale to ashen. A senator on the Intelligence Committee would have the power to launch a full investigation into their operations, and if they had been acting outside their legal authority, the consequences would be severe. "This isn't over," Agent Vance said, but she was already backing toward the exit. "We'll be back with proper warrants and legal authority." "No," Elena said quietly, "you won't. Because as of this moment, the Willow family is terminating all agreements with the federal government regarding our ancestral lands. The Willowbrook Forest is now a private preserve, and you are no longer welcome there." As the federal agents filed out of the hospital, their confident operation in shambles, Sarah realized that the day's events had changed everything. Luna had been reunited with her mother. The truth about her origins had been revealed, and the forces that wanted to exploit her had been temporarily defeated. But she also realized that this was far from over. There would be other attempts to capture or control Luna, other people who would want to use her abilities for their own purposes. And as she looked at the small family now reunited in the hospital waiting room, she knew that protecting them would require all the strength and courage that the people of Willowbrook Valley could muster. The injured bear cub, now bandaged and resting comfortably, let out a soft whimper. Luna immediately went to comfort it, her small hands glowing with a gentle warmth that seemed to ease the animal's pain. As Sarah watched this extraordinary child work her healing magic, she understood that Luna represented something precious and rare in the world, something that needed to be protected at all costs. But what none of them knew yet was that Agent Vance's retreat was only temporary. Even as she left the hospital, she was already making phone calls to superiors who had resources and authority far beyond what she had shown today. The battle for Luna's freedom had only just begun, and the forces arrayed against her were more powerful and determined than any of them could have imagined. As the hospital settled into an uneasy calm following the federal agent's departure, Sarah found herself studying the remarkable family that had just been reunited before her eyes. Elena Willow sat in one of the waiting room chairs with Luna curled up in her lap, both of them seeming to draw strength from simply being near each other after so many years apart. The mother bear had positioned herself protectively nearby, while her injured cub rested comfortably on a makeshift bed that Marcus had created from hospital blankets. Grandfather Oak had settled into a chair next to them, his weathered hands shaking slightly from the effort of the confrontation. Sarah could see that his illness was progressing rapidly, and her medical instincts told her that he didn't have much time left. But his eyes remained bright and alert, constantly scanning the hospital entrance as if he expected more trouble to arrive at any moment. "Dr. Chen," Elena said softly, "I want to thank you for taking care of Luna and the bear cub. Not many people would have shown such kindness to a situation they couldn't understand." Sarah moved closer, keeping her voice low so as not to disturb Luna, who seemed to be dozing against her mother's chest. "I have so many questions," she admitted, "about Luna, about her abilities, about what's going to happen now." Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "I know you do, and you deserve answers, especially after what you've done for us today. But first, there's something you need to understand about your own connection to this story." "My connection?" Sarah asked, confused. Grandfather Oak spoke up, his voice weak but clear. "Your parents, Dr. Chen. The night Luna was born, they didn't just deliver her and treat her mother. They became part of something much larger." Sarah felt a familiar chill run down her spine. Every time someone mentioned her parents in connection with Luna's birth, she sensed there were deeper truths waiting to be revealed. "What do you mean?" she asked. Elena shifted Luna gently in her arms, making sure the child was still sleeping before continuing. Your father, Dr. Michael Chen, was the one who delivered Luna. But during the birth, something extraordinary happened. Something that changed his understanding of medicine forever. What kind of something? Luna was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, Elena explained. She wasn't breathing, and your father worked for almost 10 minutes trying to resuscitate her. Nothing was working. The monitors showed no heartbeat, no brain activity. By all medical standards, Luna was gone. Sarah's hands clenched involuntarily. As a doctor, she knew how devastating such moments could be, especially for physicians dedicated to saving lives. But then, Grandfather Oak continued, your mother, Rebecca, did something that defied all medical protocol. She brought the therapy dog from the children's ward into the delivery room. Sarah's eyes widened. That would have been completely against hospital policy. It was, Elena agreed. But your mother said later that she felt compelled to do it, as if some force beyond her understanding was guiding her actions. The moment that dog entered the room and approached Luna's still form, something miraculous happened. Elena's voice grew soft with wonder as she continued the story. The dog began to whimper and lick Luna's face, and as it did, Luna's vital signs started returning. First a heartbeat, then breathing, then brain activity. Within minutes, she was crying and moving normally, as if nothing had happened. Sarah felt goosebumps rising on her arms. That's medically impossible. Your father said the same thing, Grandfather Oak replied. But he also said that in that moment he understood that there were healing forces in the world that science couldn't explain or measure. Forces that Luna seemed to embody from the very beginning. My parents never told me any of this, Sarah whispered. Elena's expression grew sad. They couldn't. After Luna's birth, strange things began happening at the hospital. Animals started gathering outside the building. Patients in the children's ward began recovering from illnesses that had been considered terminal. Your father documented everything, but when he tried to publish his findings, he was threatened with the loss of his medical license. Sarah's mind reeled as she tried to process this information. Her parents had always been dedicated to evidence-based medicine. But what Elena was describing sounded like they had encountered something that challenged the very foundations of their scientific worldview. There's more, Grandfather Oak said gently. Your parents' car accident when you were 12. It wasn't really an accident. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. What are you saying? They were coming to the forest that night, Elena explained. They had been researching Luna's abilities in secret for years, documenting cases of miraculous healings that seemed to be connected to her presence. They believed they had finally found a way to prove that Luna's gifts could revolutionize medicine. Sarah's legs felt weak, and she sank into a nearby chair. Someone killed my parents? We believe so, Grandfather Oak said solemnly. There were already powerful interests that wanted to suppress any evidence of Luna's abilities. Your parents' research represented a threat to those interests. Elena reached out and touched Sarah's hand gently. Your parents were heroes, Doctor. Chen. They risked everything to try to protect Luna and to understand her gifts. And in a way, their work is what led Luna to you today. I don't understand, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Luna didn't choose this hospital randomly, Elena explained. Some part of her was drawn here, to the place where she was born, to the daughter of the people who had tried to protect her. There are forces at work here that go beyond coincidence. Luna stirred in her mother's arms and opened her eyes, looking directly at Sarah with those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul. Sad lady doctor, she said softly, Luna, help, sad, go away. Before Sarah could respond, Luna reached out her small hand toward her. The moment their skin made contact, Sarah felt a warmth spread through her body, unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if all the grief and pain she had carried since her parents' death was being gently lifted away, replaced by a sense of peace and understanding. "How?" Sarah breathed, staring at the child in amazement. "Luna feels hurt in people," the child said simply. "Luna can take hurt away, make people feel better, like with animals." Sarah looked at Elena with new understanding. "She can heal emotional trauma, too." Elena nodded. "It's one of her gifts. Animals are drawn to her because they sense her ability to ease their pain, both physical and emotional. But it works on humans, too." Grandfather Oak leaned forward, his expression serious. "Dr. Chen, what you're feeling right now is just a small fraction of what Luna is capable of. In the right circumstances, with proper training and protection, she could revolutionize not just medicine, but our entire understanding of the connection between mind, body, and spirit." Sarah was about to respond when Marcus's voice cut through their conversation. "Dr. Chen, we've got a problem. There are vehicles approaching the hospital again, different ones this time." Everyone turned toward the windows where they could see a convoy of black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. But these vehicles had different markings than the federal agents' cars. These bore the insignia of a private security company. Elena's face went pale. "Blackstone Security. They're mercenaries, not government agents." "Who would hire private security to come after Luna?" Sarah asked. Grandfather Oak struggled to his feet, his expression grim. "The same people who have been trying to suppress Luna's abilities for years. The same people who likely killed your parents. They've realized that the federal approach failed, so now they're using more direct methods." Through the windows, they could see armed men in tactical gear exiting the vehicles. Unlike the federal agents, these people moved with military precision and seemed prepared for serious resistance. "We need to get Luna out of here," Elena said urgently, rising from her chair with her daughter still in her arms. But Luna was looking out the window at the approaching mercenaries, and her expression was unlike anything Sarah had seen from the child before. There was no fear in her eyes, only a kind of ancient wisdom that seemed impossible in someone so young. "Luna, no run anymore," the child said firmly. "Luna tired of bad people hurting Luna's friends. Time for Luna to show bad people what Luna really can do." Elena looked alarmed. "Luna, no. You're not ready for that kind of confrontation. Your abilities are still developing." But Luna was already sliding down from her mother's arms, moving toward the hospital entrance with a determination that belied her small size. The mother bear immediately rose to follow her, and even the injured cub struggled to its feet, instinctively wanting to protect the child who had saved its life. "Luna, wait!" Sarah called out, but the child was already approaching the automatic doors. As the doors slid open, Luna stepped out into the hospital parking lot. The Blackstone mercenaries immediately raised their weapons, but something strange happened. Their movements became sluggish, uncertain, as if they were fighting against some invisible force. Then the forest around the hospital began to come alive. Birds poured out of the trees in massive flocks, circling overhead and creating a deafening cacophony of calls and cries. Squirrels and rabbits emerged from the underbrush, followed by deer, raccoons, and other woodland creatures. Within minutes, the hospital parking lot was surrounded by what seemed like every animal in the Willowbrook forest. But it wasn't just the forest animals. Dogs began howling throughout the town, breaking free from their yards and running toward the hospital. Cats appeared on rooftops and in windows, their eyes fixed on the small figure standing in the parking lot. Even farm animals from the surrounding countryside seemed to be responding to some invisible summons. The Blackstone. Mercenaries found themselves surrounded by hundreds of animals, all focused on protecting the small child who had called them. Several of the men lowered their weapons, their faces showing a mixture of fear and awe. Luna stood in the center of it all, her small form somehow commanding the attention and loyalty of creatures that should have been natural enemies. She looked up at the lead mercenary and spoke in a voice that carried clearly across the parking lot. Luna. No hurt people if people no hurt Luna's family. But people try to hurt Luna's family, then Luna ask animal friends to protect Luna. The lead mercenary, a tall man with cold eyes and military bearing, stepped forward. Little girl, you need to come with us. We're not here to hurt you, but we have orders to bring you to people who can help you understand your abilities better. Luna tilted her head, studying the man with those penetrating blue eyes. Man lying. Luna feel man's heart. Man want to hurt Luna, use Luna for bad things. Luna say no. The man's hand moved toward his weapon, but before he could draw it, a massive brown shape emerged from the forest. It was the father bear, the mate of the mother bear who had been inside the hospital with Luna. He was enormous, easily 9 feet tall when he reared up on his hind legs, and his roar shook the windows of the hospital. But he wasn't alone. Behind him came other bears, a whole family group that Sarah realized must be Luna's extended adopted family. They positioned themselves between Luna and the mercenaries, their message clear and unmistakable. The standoff that followed was unlike anything anyone present had ever witnessed. On one side stood a small child and her army of forest creatures, backed by several massive bears and what seemed like every domestic animal in the valley. On the other side stood a group of heavily armed mercenaries who were beginning to realize that they were vastly outnumbered and outmatched. But Luna wasn't finished demonstrating her abilities. She closed her eyes and began to hum that strange, haunting melody that Sarah had heard earlier. As the sound filled the air, something even more extraordinary happened. The plants and trees around the hospital began to respond. Vines crept out from the forest, growing at an impossible speed and beginning to entangle the mercenaries' vehicles. Tree branches stretched toward the parking lot, creating natural barriers and escape routes. Flowers bloomed out of season, filling the air with scents that seemed to calm and disorient the armed men. "This is impossible," one of the mercenaries whispered, his weapon forgotten in his hands. Luna opened her eyes and looked directly at the lead mercenary. "Luna connected to all life," she said, her young voice carrying a power that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. "Luna can ask life to help protect itself. People who want to hurt life, no, like those people." Elena had followed Luna outside, along with Sarah, Marcus, and Grandfather Oak. As they watched Luna demonstrate abilities that defied everything they thought they knew about the natural world, Sarah began to understand the true scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just a child with an unusual connection to animals. This was someone who seemed to be able to communicate with and command the entire natural world around her. The implications were staggering, and, Sarah realized, terrifying to anyone who saw nature as something to be controlled and exploited. The lead mercenary was speaking into his radio, his voice tense. "Base, this is Alpha Team. We have a situation here that's beyond our parameters. Request immediate extraction." But, even as he called for retreat, more vehicles were arriving at the hospital. This time, however, they weren't hostile. Sheriff's deputies, state police, and even some federal agents bearing different insignia were surrounding the Blackstone vehicles. A woman in a crisp business suit emerged from one of the official vehicles and approached the standoff. She was tall and commanding, with silver hair and an expression of barely controlled fury. "I am Senator Patricia Willow. she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. "And you men are trespassing on private property and threatening a minor under federal protection." The lead mercenary looked confused. "Ma'am, we have authorization from—" "You have authorization from no one," Senator Willow cut him off. "The organization that hired you has been operating outside legal authority for years. As of 1 hour ago, they have been disbanded by executive order, and their operations have been transferred to agencies that actually follow the law." Sarah watched as the political and legal machinery that Elena and Grandfather Oak had set in motion began to dismantle the threats against Luna. But she also realized that this was likely just the beginning. There would always be people who wanted to exploit Luna's abilities, who saw her as a resource to be harvested rather than a child to be protected. As the Blackstone mercenaries were escorted away by legitimate law enforcement, Luna walked back toward the hospital. The animals that had responded to her call began to disperse, returning to their natural habitats but remaining alert for any future threats. Luna paused in front of Sarah and reached up to take her hand. Sad Lady Doctor help Luna. Now Luna part of Sad Lady Doctor's family too. Luna protect new family, and new family protect Luna. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she knelt down to Luna's level. "I would be honored to be part of your family, Luna." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah knew that their challenges were far from over. Luna had revealed abilities today that would attract attention from around the world. Protecting her would require constant vigilance, careful planning, and the cooperation of people in positions of power who understood what was at stake. As they all headed back into the hospital, Grandfather Oak pulled Sarah aside. "Dr. Chen, there's something else you need to know. Something about Luna's abilities that we haven't told you yet." Sarah looked at the old man, seeing the urgency in his eyes. "What is it?" "Luna's powers are still growing," he said quietly. "What you saw today is nothing compared to what she'll be capable of as she matures. And there are others like her, children born with similar gifts, scattered around the world. Luna may be the key to finding and protecting them all." The implications of his words hit Sarah like a physical force. If there were other children with abilities like Luna's, and if there were people who wanted to exploit those abilities, then Luna's story was just the beginning of something much larger and more complex. "How many others?" Sarah asked. Grandfather Oak's expression grew grave. "We don't know for certain, but our research suggests that there could be dozens, maybe hundreds, of children around the world who possess various forms of supernatural abilities. And if the wrong people find them first—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Sarah understood. Children with miraculous abilities would be valuable to anyone who wanted to weaponize the supernatural, study it, or control it. And most of those children would be far more vulnerable than Luna, who had the protection of her forest family and the legal resources of the Willow family. As they re-entered the hospital, where Elena was settling Luna and the bears into a more comfortable area that Marcus had prepared, Sarah realized that her life had been irrevocably changed. She was no longer just a small-town doctor treating ordinary ailments. She was now part of something that could reshape the world's understanding of the possible. But with that realization came a sobering truth. The forces that had tried to capture Luna today would regroup and return with new strategies. Other organizations around the world would learn about Luna's abilities and develop their own plans to acquire her. And somewhere out there, other children with similar gifts were waiting to be discovered, protected, or exploited. The battle for Luna's freedom had been won, but the war for the future of children like her was just beginning. And Sarah Chen, whose parents had died trying to protect the secret of Luna's abilities, now found herself on the front lines of that war, determined to honor their sacrifice by ensuring that Luna and others like her would never become victims of those who would use their gifts for harmful purposes. Little did any of them know that their actions today had already attracted the attention of organizations far more powerful and dangerous than anything they had yet encountered. Forces that operated in the shadows of international politics and had resources that made the federal agents and private mercenaries look like amateurs. The real test of their ability to protect Luna was still to come. 3 days after the confrontation at the hospital, life in Willowbrook Valley had settled into an uneasy routine. Luna had been staying at the hospital while Elena worked to establish a secure living situation for them, and Sarah had found herself becoming more involved with the family than she had ever expected. The injured bear cub, whom Luna had named Honey, was recovering remarkably well under Luna's constant care and attention. But it was during those quiet days that Sarah began to notice something troubling about Grandfather Oak. His condition was deteriorating rapidly, and despite Luna's healing abilities, there seemed to be nothing anyone could do to slow the progression of his illness. "Luna, try and try," the child said sadly, as she sat beside the old man's bedside in the hospital's extended care wing. But Grandfather Oak's sickness different. Not in body, in spirit. Grandfather Oak ready to go to Great Forest and Sky. Sarah knelt beside Luna, gently placing a hand on the child's shoulder. "Sometimes, sweetheart, even with all our abilities and medical knowledge, we can't stop the natural cycle of life. Grandfather Oak has lived a long, full life, taking care of you and protecting the forest." Grandfather Oak's eyes opened, and despite his weakness, his gaze was still sharp and alert. "Dr. Chen is right, little moon child. My time here is ending, but before I go, there are things you must know. Secrets that only I have kept safe all these years." Elena, who had been reading quietly in a nearby chair, looked up with concern. "Father, you should rest. Save your strength." The old man managed a weak smile. "My strength is almost gone, daughter of my heart, but my knowledge must not die with me. Too much depends on Luna understanding the full truth of what she is and what she represents." Sarah noticed that he had called Elena daughter of my heart, and she wondered about the exact nature of their relationship. There were still so many mysteries surrounding Luna's family and origins. "Grandfather Oak," Luna said softly. "Luna, listen. Luna, learn." The old man struggled to sit up higher in his bed, and Sarah moved to help him, adjusting his pillows for comfort. "Luna, you know that your mother's family, the Willows, have special abilities. But what you don't know is that the Willow family is part of something much larger, much older." Elena set down her book, her expression growing serious. "Father, are you sure she's ready to hear this?" "She must be ready," Grandfather Oak replied firmly, "because the people who will come for her next will know these secrets, and she needs to understand what they're truly after." Sarah felt a familiar chill of foreboding. "What kind of secrets?" Grandfather Oak's eyes focused on a point beyond the hospital room, as if he were seeing into a distant past. Thousands of years ago, when the world was younger and the barrier between the natural and supernatural worlds was thinner, there were individuals born with the ability to bridge those worlds. They were called the Chosen, and they appeared in cultures all around the globe. Luna's eyes widened with interest. "Other people like Luna?" "Yes, child. But not just like you. Each of the Chosen had different gifts. Some could communicate with animals like you. Others could control the elements, heal with a touch, see the future, or even speak with the spirits of the dead." Sarah felt her scientific mind struggling to process this information, but after everything she had witnessed over the past few days, she found herself more open to possibilities that would have seemed impossible just a week ago. "What happened to them?" Elena asked. Grandfather Oak's expression grew dark. They were hunted. Throughout history, there have been organizations dedicated to finding and controlling the chosen. Sometimes they were religious groups who saw them as either divine or demonic. Sometimes they were governments who wanted to use their abilities for warfare. Sometimes they were wealthy individuals who collected them like rare objects. Sarah thought about Agent Vance and the Blackstone mercenaries, and she realized that Luna was facing threats that had existed for millennia. But some of them must have escaped, or Luna wouldn't be here. The wisest of the chosen went into hiding, Grandfather Oak confirmed. They scattered to remote locations around the world, established secret communities, and learned to suppress their abilities to avoid detection. The Willow family has been guardians of this knowledge for over 20 generations. Luna looked confused. Luna's family guard what knowledge? Elena reached over and took her daughter's hand. The locations of other chosen communities, Luna. The names and abilities of other families like ours. The ancient teachings that help people like you learn to control and develop your gifts safely. Sarah felt the weight of this revelation settling over her. You're saying there's an entire hidden world of people with supernatural abilities. Hidden, but not gone, Grandfather Oak said. And Luna represents something that hasn't been seen for over 300 years. She's what the ancient texts call a prime, a chosen one whose abilities are so strong and so varied that she can potentially awaken the dormant gifts in others. The room fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. Sarah looked at Luna, who was sitting quietly and absorbing everything with the serious expression of someone far older than her physical age. Luna can make other people have gifts too? The child asked. Not exactly, Grandfather Oak explained. But your presence and energy can help people who already carry the genetic markers for abilities to access those gifts. Most chosen bloodlines have become diluted over the centuries, with family members carrying the potential but never manifesting actual abilities. But exposure to a prime can change that. Sarah suddenly thought about her own strange experiences over the past few days. The way she had felt drawn to Luna from the moment she saw her. The unusual clarity of thought and emotional healing she had experienced when Luna touched her hand. The fact that she seemed to be developing an almost intuitive understanding of Luna's needs and emotions. Dr. Chen, Grandfather Oak said, seeming to read her thoughts, your reaction to Luna is not accidental. Your family line carries markers too. Sarah stared at him in shock. That's impossible. My parents were ordinary doctors. There was nothing supernatural about them. Your parents were extraordinary healers, Grandfather Oak corrected. They had an intuitive understanding of medicine that went beyond what their training could explain. Your father could diagnose conditions that other doctors missed, sometimes before any symptoms appeared. Your mother had a gift for comforting patients that seemed to actually accelerate their healing. Sarah's mind raced back through her memories of her parents. She had always admired their seemingly miraculous ability to help people, but she had attributed it to skill and dedication, not supernatural gifts. But they never displayed abilities like Luna's, Sarah protested, because they lived in a world where such abilities were suppressed or explained away as exceptional skill, Elena said gently. But you, Sarah, have been exposed to Luna's prime energy for several days now. Have you noticed any changes in yourself? Sarah thought about it honestly. She had been having unusually vivid dreams. Her diagnostic abilities at the hospital had seemed sharper than usual, and she had been experiencing moments of what she could only describe as empathic connection with her patients, sensing their emotional states as clearly as their physical symptoms. I don't know, she said uncertainly, maybe. Luna reached out and took Sarah's hand, and immediately Sarah felt that warm, comforting sensation that seemed to flow from the child's touch. But this time, something else happened. For just a moment, Sarah could feel what Luna was feeling. The child's love for her adopted bear family, her grief over Grandfather Oak's approaching death, her fear of the people who wanted to hurt her, and underneath it all, a deep well of compassion for all living things. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, pulling her hand back in shock. I felt what you were feeling." Luna smiled, the expression of pure joy lighting up her small face. "Sarah have gift too." Luna can feel Sarah's gift waking up. Grandfather Oak nodded weakly. "And that, Doctor, Chen, is why Luna is so valuable to the people who hunt the chosen. She doesn't just have her own abilities, she can awaken abilities in others, potentially creating an entire community of people with supernatural gifts." The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Sarah looked around the room at Elena, Luna, and the dying old man who had protected these secrets for so long, and she realized that she was now part of something that could literally change the world. But before anyone could say more, Marcus's voice crackled over the hospital's intercom system. "Dr. Chen, please report to the main entrance immediately. We have visitors who are asking specifically for you and Luna." Sarah's blood ran cold. More federal agents? Elena was already moving toward the window, her expression tense. "No," she said, her voice filled with dread. "These are different. These are international." Through the window, Sarah could see a convoy of sleek black vehicles with diplomatic plates. Men and women in expensive suits were emerging from the cars, moving with the kind of confident authority that came from representing powerful organizations. "Who are they?" Sarah asked. Grandfather Oak struggled to sit up, his face pale with urgency. "The consortium," he whispered. "I had hoped we would have more time before they found us." "The consortium," Sarah repeated. Elena turned from the window, her expression grim. "An international organization that has been hunting and collecting chosen individuals for over 2 centuries. They operate with the backing of multiple governments and have resources that most people can't even imagine." Luna looked up at the adults with frightened eyes. "More bad people want to take Luna away?" Sarah felt a surge of protective anger. "No one is taking you anywhere, Luna, I promise." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah knew that this threat was unlike anything they had faced before. The federal agents and mercenaries had been operating within the constraints of U.S. law, however loosely. But an international organization with diplomatic backing would have resources and authority that could be nearly impossible to resist. Grandfather Oak gripped Luna's hand with what little strength he had left. "Little moon child, remember what I taught you about the deep forest magic. Remember the songs of calling and the words of protection. You may need them sooner than we planned." Luna nodded solemnly, and Sarah could see the child's innocence giving way to a premature understanding of the dangers she faced. It broke Sarah's heart to see someone so young forced to bear such weight. "Dr. Chen." Marcus's voice came over the intercom again, more urgent this time. "They're asking for you by name, and they say they have legal authority to examine Luna under international health protocols." Sarah looked at Elena desperately. "Can they do that?" Elena's jaw was set with determination. "They can try, but they'll find that the Willow family has been preparing for this confrontation for longer than they realize." As they prepared to face this new threat, none of them noticed the subtle changes that were already taking place throughout the hospital. Plants in the lobby were growing more vibrantly, as if responding to some unseen energy. Animals in the surrounding area were becoming restless, sensing approaching danger. And in the extended care wing, Several patients who had been suffering from chronic conditions were beginning to show signs of unexplained improvement. Luna's presence as a prime was already beginning to affect the entire area, awakening dormant gifts and strengthening the natural healing energies of the place. But this miraculous influence was also acting like a beacon, drawing attention from organizations around the world that had been searching for someone with her abilities for decades. The confrontation that was about to unfold would determine not just Luna's fate, but the future of all chosen individuals worldwide. And Sarah Chen, whose awakening empathic abilities were already making her more sensitive to the supernatural energies surrounding Luna, was about to play a crucial role in that confrontation. As they made their way toward the hospital's main entrance, Sarah realized that her life as an ordinary small-town doctor was officially over. She was now part of a hidden world of supernatural abilities and ancient conflicts, and the choices she made in the next few hours could determine whether Luna would grow up free to use her gifts for healing and protection, or become a weapon in the hands of people who saw her only as a means to power. The consortium representatives were waiting in the lobby when they arrived, and Sarah could immediately sense that these people were different from the federal agents and mercenaries they had dealt with before. They carried themselves with the confidence of individuals who were accustomed to getting what they wanted, regardless of local laws or resistance. But what none of the consortium representatives knew was that their arrival had triggered ancient protective protocols that the Willow family had maintained for generations. Even as they prepared to present their legal documents and international authority, forces were being set in motion that would challenge their assumptions about their own power and the extent of their reach. Luna walked into the lobby holding Sarah's hand, her small form somehow commanding the attention of everyone present. As the consortium representatives turned to focus on her, Sarah felt the child's grip tighten, and she realized that Luna was drawing strength from their connection. "Luna, ready," the child whispered, so quietly that only Sarah could hear. Luna, no scared anymore. Luna, know who Luna really is now. The battle for Luna's freedom was about to enter a new phase, one that would test not just their ability to protect her, but their understanding of the true scope of her powers and the depth of the forces aligned against them. And as Sarah looked into Luna's determined blue eyes, she realized that they were all about to discover just how much the world could change when a prime chosen one decided to stop hiding and start fighting back. The lead consortium representative, a tall woman with silver hair and cold, calculating eyes, stepped forward with a folder of official-looking documents. "I am Director Catherine Blackwood of the International Supernatural Research Consortium. We have legal authority under Article 47 of the Geneva Convention on Extraordinary Individuals to take custody of the subject known as Luna for comprehensive evaluation and training." Elena stepped protectively in front of her daughter. "Luna is not a subject. She's a child, and she's under the protection of her legal guardian." Director Blackwood smiled, but it was an expression devoid of warmth. "Mrs. Willow, your legal guardianship is superseded by international protocols when dealing with individuals who pose potential global security risks." Sarah felt her newly awakened empathic abilities picking up waves of cold ambition and ruthless determination from the consortium representatives. These people saw Luna as nothing more than a resource to be exploited, and they had the legal machinery to justify taking her. But Luna had been listening to this exchange with growing understanding, and suddenly she stepped forward, her small hand reaching up to touch her mother's arm. "Mama, Luna, ready now. Luna, know what to do." Elena looked down at her daughter with concern. "Luna, we talked about this. You're not ready for—" "Luna is ready," the child interrupted, her voice carrying a new note of authority that made everyone in the lobby stop and listen. "Grandfather Oak teach Luna the old ways. Luna, remember now." Luna moved to the center of the hospital lobby, And as she did, something extraordinary began to happen. The plants throughout the building started to respond, growing visibly and filling the air with a rich, earthy scent. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim as a different kind of illumination began to emanate from Luna herself, a soft golden glow that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a heartbeat. "What is she doing?" Director Blackwood demanded, her confident composure beginning to crack. Sarah felt it then, a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if Luna was calling out through some invisible network that connected all living things, sending a message that traveled far beyond the walls of the hospital. And as that message spread, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Animals began arriving from every direction. Not just the forest creatures that had come to Luna's aid before, but domestic animals from throughout the valley. Dogs broke free from their leashes and yards, cats leaped down from their perches, horses jumped fences, and even farm animals left their pastures to answer Luna's call. But it wasn't just animals. People began arriving too. Sarah watched in amazement as individuals from throughout Willowbrook Valley converged on the hospital. Some came on foot, some in cars, some on bicycles, all of them moving with the same purposeful determination, as if responding to a summons they couldn't ignore. "Dr. Rodriguez?" Sarah gasped, recognizing the elderly physician who had delivered her when she was born. Behind him came Nurse Williams from the children's ward, then Tom the groundskeeper, then Mrs. Patterson who ran the local library. One by one, people Sarah had known all her life were gathering in and around the hospital. But what was most remarkable was what was happening to these people as they came within Luna's sphere of influence. Their eyes were beginning to glow with the same soft golden light that surrounded Luna, and as they gathered, Sarah could sense something awakening in each of them. Dormant abilities that had been sleeping in their bloodlines for generations were beginning to stir. Director Blackwood was speaking urgently into a communication device, calling for backup, but Luna turned to face her with those penetrating blue eyes that now seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. "Bad people no understand," Luna said, her young voice carrying across the crowded lobby with crystal clarity. Luna know just one person. Luna part of something bigger, something that was sleeping, but now waking up. The consortium representatives tried to approach Luna, but they found their way blocked by the growing crowd of people and animals. And as more individuals arrived, the energy in the hospital continued to build, creating an almost electric atmosphere that made the hair on everyone's arms stand up. Sarah felt her own abilities expanding rapidly under Luna's influence. She could now sense the emotions and intentions of everyone in the room. The fear and confusion of the consortium agents, the protective love of Elena, the fierce loyalty of the townspeople, and underlying it all, Luna's own consciousness, vast and ancient, and filled with a compassion that encompassed all living things. "This is impossible," Director Blackwood said, her voice betraying her growing panic. "One individual can't awaken this many dormant abilities simultaneously." Grandfather Oak's weak voice carried from the wheelchair that Elena had brought him down in, despite his protests. "Director Blackwood, you and your organization have fundamentally misunderstood what Luna represents. She isn't just a gifted individual. She's a catalyst for the return of humanity's lost connection to the natural world." As if to emphasize his words, the very building began to respond to Luna's presence. Vines grew through cracks in the walls, flowers bloomed in impossible places, and the sterile hospital environment was transformed into something that felt more like a living forest sanctuary. Luna looked around at all the people and animals who had come to protect her, and her small face lit up with a smile of pure joy. Luna no alone anymore. Luna have family. Big family. She raised her small hands, and everyone present felt a warm sensation wash over them. Sarah realized that Luna was sharing her healing energy with all of them, not just curing physical ailments, but healing emotional wounds and awakening connections to the natural world that modern life had taught them to forget. People throughout the crowd began to display their newly awakened abilities. Dr. Rodriguez's hands began to glow with healing light. Nurse Williams started communicating with the therapy animals that had arrived. Tom the groundskeeper caused flowers to bloom from the hospital's landscaping with just a touch. Each person was manifesting gifts that seemed perfectly suited to their personality and life experience. Director Blackwood made one last desperate attempt to assert control. This unauthorized awakening violates multiple international protocols. We have authority to shut this down by any means necessary. But Luna simply looked at her with those ancient, compassionate eyes and said, "No. Time for hiding finished. Time for healing begin. Earth sick because people forget they part of nature, not separate from nature. Luna helped people remember." The golden light surrounding Luna intensified, and Sarah felt a wave of pure love and understanding wash over everyone present. For a moment, every person in that hospital lobby experienced what Luna experienced every day: the interconnectedness of all living things, the possibility of healing without harm, the potential for humans to live in harmony with the natural world rather than in conflict with it. Director Blackwood and her team found themselves overwhelmed not by force or aggression, but by the simple, undeniable truth of what they were witnessing. Several of them began to lower their weapons and communication devices, their faces showing the first glimmers of understanding. "We came here to capture a weapon," one of the younger consortium agents said quietly. "But she's not a weapon at all, she's a healer." Elena knelt down beside Luna, tears streaming down her face. "My brave little moon child, you did it. You showed them what you really are." Luna hugged her mother tightly, then looked around at all the people and animals who had come to stand with her. "Luna, show everyone what everyone really is. People just forget for a while. But Luna helped people remember." Sarah approached the small family, her heart overflowing with emotions she had never experienced before. "Luna, what happens now?" Luna took Sarah's hand, and through their connection, Sarah felt a vision of the future. She saw communities around the world where people with awakened abilities worked together to heal environmental damage, to communicate with animals, to solve conflicts through empathy rather than violence. She saw a world where the artificial barriers between humans and nature had been dissolved, replaced by understanding and cooperation. "Now, Luna teach," the child said simply. "Luna teach people how to use gifts for good, how to help Earth get better, how to make sure no more animals get hurt, no more people feel alone." Grandfather Oak smiled from his wheelchair, his weathered face peaceful despite his obvious weakness. The prophecies spoke of a time when the Prime would awaken the sleeping gifts and reunite the scattered children. I lived long, enough to see it happen. As if responding to his words, the golden light around Luna pulsed one final time and then settled into a warm, gentle glow that seemed to emanate from everyone present. The awakening was complete, and the world had changed forever. Director Blackwood slowly put away her documents and communication device. The consortium has operated under the assumption that individuals with supernatural abilities represented a threat to be contained. But what if we've been wrong? What if they represent hope for solving problems that conventional methods can't address? Elena stood up, still holding Luna's hand. "Director Blackwood, the Willow family has been waiting for generations for the right time to reveal what we've been protecting. If your organization is truly interested in using these abilities for the betterment of humanity, rather than for control and exploitation, then perhaps we can work together." Sarah looked around at the transformed hospital lobby, filled with people and animals living in harmony, demonstrating abilities that would have been considered impossible just hours before. She thought of her parents, whose deaths had been part of a long effort to protect Luna's secret, and she knew they would be proud to see this moment. "Luna," Sarah said softly, "I understand now why you brought that injured bear cub to the hospital. It wasn't just about getting medical help. It was about bringing us all together, wasn't it?" Luna nodded, her blue eyes twinkling with the wisdom of someone far older than her physical years. Bear Baby hurt, Luna help, but also, Luna know that helping Bear Baby would help Luna find new family, help Luna find people who understand Luna's heart. Marcus, who had been watching the entire transformation with amazement, stepped forward. "So, what do we do now? How do we protect all these newly awakened people? And how do we make sure Luna stays safe?" Elena smiled, and for the first time since Sarah had met her, the expression held no worry or fear. "We don't hide anymore. We build communities. We teach others about their gifts. We work together to heal the damage that's been done to our world. And we make sure that no child with abilities like Luna's ever has to grow up alone and afraid." Luna let go of her mother's and Sarah's hands and walked to the center of the lobby, where she was surrounded by the circle of people and animals who had come to protect her. She looked around at all of them with love and gratitude. "Luna have something to say," she announced in her clear young voice. "Luna want to thank everyone. Thank Grandfather Oak for teaching Luna forest ways. Thank Mama for loving Luna even when far away. Thank Sarah for helping Luna and becoming Luna's friend. Thank Bear family for raising Luna with love. Thank everyone for coming to help Luna today." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a note of joy that made everyone present smile. "But mostly, Luna want to say that today not ending. Today beginning of time when people remember how to talk to animals, how to heal Earth, how to help each other. Luna no special because Luna different. Luna special because Luna help everyone remember they special too." As the golden light settled around them all, Sarah realized that Luna was right. This wasn't an ending at all. It was the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one where the artificial divisions between humans and nature, between science and magic, between fear and understanding, would finally begin to heal. The little girl who had brought an injured bear cub to the hospital had done something far more remarkable than anyone could have imagined. She had brought healing not just to one small animal, but to the broken relationship between humanity and the natural world. And as the sun set over Willowbrook Valley that evening, casting golden light over a hospital that had been transformed into a sanctuary where the impossible had become possible, everyone present knew that they had witnessed the beginning of something truly miraculous. Luna's story was just beginning, and the world would never be the same.